Okay, so recently I've been doing these video game pitch videos where I take a game series I like and I pitch my idea for a game in that series. I've also been doing them mostly for 2D series since I'm unhappy with the way 2D games are currently handled in the AAA space. One series I am very much a fan of is Kirby. Return to Dreamland just so happens to be one of my top 5 favorite games ever, and I have zero intention to change that opinion, not even with a gun to my head. I also happen to really love Kirby in the Forgotten Land, which was a phenomenal first entry into 3D for the series. Since Forgotten Land was so great, I'm really hoping that we continue to get amazing 3D Kirby games for years to come, even though I have no idea on how on earth they intend on topping Forgotten Land. However, while I do want more 3D entries, that doesn't mean I want 2D to fall by the wayside. Far from it. I love 2D Kirby, and I greatly hope that we can frequently get entries in both the 2D and 3D series. It seems Hal also agrees that 2D Kirby still has value even after Forgotten Land, since a few months ago they provided us with an incredible remaster of Return to Dreamland. This was an absolute treat, but while I would absolutely love also getting remasters of Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, I think it's imperative that 2D Kirby doesn't end up in remaster purgatory. We'll need new 2D Kirby games right alongside the 3D ones. So, in order to prove that 2D Kirby can expand its scope and become on par with 3D Kirby, I decided to pitch my idea for a 2D Kirby game, named Kirby Spectral Voyage. Story-wise, this game will be a sequel to both Return to Dreamland and Star Allies. Most Kirby stories never really continue from each other and mostly just work as self-contained stories, since the Kirby series is heavily targeted at gaming newcomers who wouldn't understand if one game's story was built off of another. But Kirby has some incredible lore, and I just can't help but build off of the amazing stuff we got in these games. So I think we can make it work for newcomers by just not mentioning that the returning plot elements have appeared before. If the returning element is a character with dialogue, and ignoring their previous appearances isn't something that will make any sense, then their previous appearance can be mentioned but just sort of glossed over and labeled as unimportant. Anyway, let us begin. The game starts off on a balcony in Castle Dedede, where Kirby and Dedede are competing in a game of chess. Suddenly, something catches Kirby's eye from above the castle. Kirby decides it's worth investigating, so he floats up to take a closer look, and finds a Sphere Doomer flying around. Now that he has a good view, Kirby sees lots of Sphere Doomers and other interdimensional creatures coming out of random portals and starting to wreak havoc. Kirby starts running towards a large concentration of dimensional monsters he sees a ways away, but gets blocked by the Sphere Doomer on the roof. A couple more Doomers fly down to assist the first one against Kirby, and to match, King Dedede and Bandana D come up to assist Kirby. A small cutscene fight ensues, which ends with Kirby stuck flying on the back of a wounded Doomer, who flies back through one of the portals that the Doomers came through, and crashes into the ground. Kirby gets up and runs back towards the portal, but the portal closes before he can get to it, leaving Kirby stuck in this dimension while Dreamland gets invaded by monsters. While he's on the ground, a mysterious figure walks up to him. Kirby looks up and sees what appears to be another Kirby? This Kirby is yellow, and he introduces himself as Kirby, as a fun little nod to Kirby's Dreamforce. Kirby says that he was thrown into this dimension as the result of a horrible disaster, and that he recognizes Kirby from his dimension and has heard of his heroic deeds. Kirby gets up and immediately starts looking around to try and find a potential way out of this dimension. Kirby figures that since they're both stranded, they might be able to team up and find a way out of there. Kirby tells Kirby that not too far from them, there's an old abandoned interdimensional ship that's just lying around. It's out of fuel, but they may be able to team up to procure some. This cues the tutorial level, where Kirby makes his way to the ship that Kirby told him about. Once you and Kirby arrive, you find that the ship Kirby spoke of is none other than the Lore Starcutter. Kirby notices that Kirby looks like he's seen the ship before, but he brushes it aside and they both look around inside the Starcutter. They're able to get the ship flying, but it will need a certain amount of interdimensional energy charge before it can portal them back to Dreamland. Alright, now that the opening stuff is done, let's talk about the world map. The world map of this game will borrow heavily from Super Mario Galaxy 2. Instead of walking between levels or flying between them on a warp star, you fly between each level on the Lore Starcutter. Anytime on the map screen, you can cancel out of flight mode and walk around the Lore Starcutter as your hub world, and beating a level will shoot you back to walking around the hub part of the Starcutter instead of sending you right back into the map screen. If you go up to the control console on the Starcutter, you can re-enter the map screen. The interior of this game's Star Cutter will be revamped from the one in Return to Dreamland. Copyability changes and some new minigames will still be there, of course, because those are fun, obviously. But their positioning and layout will be rearranged, and there will be some new sections added where you can buy food and upgrade copyabilities. This game won't have rare stones, since that's Forgotten Land's thing, so instead these copyabilities will just be upgraded using star coins, though they'll cost a lot more star coins than in Forgotten Land since there's no rare stones. The copyability challenges here will only be unlocked from having gotten the upgraded version of that copyability instead of getting gears like in Return to Dreamland. It will cost star coins for you to try each copyability challenge, but you'll gain star coins from getting medals in each of these challenges. Also, yeah, this game will go the Forgotten Land approach of having stuff you can buy with star coins and having you lose star coins when you die, instead of star coins only getting you more lives and having you lose lives when you die. I just think that the more modern system with the star coins is just generally better, and I like buying stuff in Hub Worlds, so I'll be pushing the star coins heavily. I will explain exactly why everything on the Star Cutter is so heavily capitalized later, but for now I have other things to discuss. It's time for another thing that this game will take from Super Mario Galaxy 2's map screen, the branching paths. One part of the reason Galaxy 2 is my favorite usage of the traditional linear platformer map screen is because of the Starship Mario Hub World you're using to fly around the map screen, which I mentioned earlier, but the other part is because of the branching paths. I really love branching paths in linear games. It gives you the player agency to choose your route without compromising the linear level design. In Mario Galaxy 2, you're given several branching paths one after another, but you still need to complete every level before fighting the boss of that world. I say we should adopt that system into this Kirby game. However, we will be changing it up a little as to make it so that Kirby isn't straight up ripping off Mario here. One change, Galaxy 2 has some levels with multiple missions involved, which while I think is really cool, we won't be doing that in Kirby Spectral Voyage. Instead, this game will push the path branches even more early on. Often you'll unlock 3 new levels at once instead of just 2, or run into a path branch on an already branched path, and this will start happening as early as the second world. This world map will have side challenge levels strewn around it, based around getting as many star coins as possible. Basically, this game's equivalent of treasure roads, but for star coins instead of rare stones, since you just use coins to buy copyability upgrades now. We're really pushing capitalism in this Kirby game. Some smaller changes. Galaxy 2 rails you onto just flying the ship between each level, while this game will let you fly the Star Cutter all around the map screen, like you can in the other Kirby map screens. Also, in Galaxy 2's map screens, the first level in a world is at the left end of the screen, while the final level is at the right end, while most Kirby map screens have you start at the bottom and going to the top, which is what we'll be doing here instead. Onto the level design. Instead of getting a star door thingy at the end of the level, like in most Kirby games, your goal will be to get an interdimensional energy charge to fuel the Star Cutter. One of these will be at the end of each level. Now, most 2D platformer levels have you start at the left side of the level, and it's your goal to make a straight beeline to the right side of the level. Kirby has been no stranger to mixing this up a little, adding a bit of verticality levels and the like, and I think for this game it should do that even more. More verticality, you can have the player switch from going right to going left periodically. The end of each level doesn't even theoretically need to be at the right side of each level, just as long as it's at the end of a linear path. Side note, I think all platformers should do this. Just going from left to right in every side-scroller ever annoys the shit out of me. Now, that's not all, because this game's gotta have a gimmick. So the gimmick I've built for Kirby Spectral Voyage is portal hopping. Sometimes in levels you'll find a portal that will either take you to a different location in that level, or to a weird alternate universe version of that level where you'll be able to progress if you couldn't in the normal version. Normally, lots of these portals will be packed together in the same-ish location, so whole sections of levels will be dedicated to portal hopping between areas in that stage, or alternate versions of the area in the stage you're already in. Next part, general gameplay. It's typical 2D Kirby gameplay as per usual, what did you expect? I suppose there'd be a few new copy abilities, particularly some that take advantage of this game's extra-dimensional setting. Maybe something that uses similar powers to what Doomers use. Then there'd also be some copy abilities returning from more recent Kirby games, like Ranger and Sand. Those were both awesome. Aside from that, I suppose I should mention co-op multiplayer. Player 1 is Kirby, Player 2 is Kirby, and Players 3 and 4 are weird, ghostly, multicolored phantom Kirbys. Since the Yellow Kirby Player 2 is actually canon now, I figured it would make more sense to have the non-canon multiplayer Kirbys have something to distinguish them from the real Kirbys. Okay, we've handled the opening story segment, the hub world, the world map, the gameplay, and the level design. Now it's on to actual progression through the game. Dimension 1. The levels in this dimension, including the tutorial level, will resemble the dimensional space you spent the Magolor Epilogue in. This area's enemies will also resemble the enemies in the Magolor Epilogue, though there will be a lot of extra-dimensional versions of the enemies from Popstar, so that you can get your copy abilities. These Popstar enemy variants will show up in basically every dimension in the game, though their method of variance from the original will vary between dimensions. At the end of Dimension 1, you fight your first boss, Spectral Woods. It's a weird extra-dimensional version of Wispy, because we need to have Wispy, of course. After that, you make your way to Dimension 2. Now, since I don't want this game setting to rip off Magolor Epilogue completely, the dimension you enter for Dimension 2 won't be yet another one of these dimensions. Instead, this dimension seems like a normal world, and it looks like some sort of coastal city. This dimension still does have telltale signs of being extra-dimensional, however. There is still one of those weird dimension grids lining the blue sky, and also, Doomers are attacking this dimension. Just how, like, they're attacking your dimension. The Star Cutter lands near a shopping district in this city. There, Kirby and Kirby find multiple Doomers being fended off from a shopping stand by magic blasts and flying off. A voice shouts after them, "That's what I thought! Stay away from my shopping!" The guy who fought off the Doomers then turns to the two puffballs, and it's revealed, holy crap-a-holy, it's Magolor! He landed in this dimension after fighting his way out of the last one in Magolor Epilogue. Then he opened the shop and did all the Kirby Clash stuff here. Magolor looks up the Star Cutter and explains, "Hey, holy shit, that's my ship!" And then he looks at Kirby and exclaims, "Hey, holy shit, it's you!" Obviously, he would not actually say the word shit, as this is a Kirby game. He'll approach Kirby and Kirby and begin talking. "Kirby, that's my ship. What are you doing here with my ship?"
Wait, hold on, Kirby, you know this guy?
Yeah, a while back he kinda stopped me from taking over the universe.
What? Kirby, how many adventures have you been on?
Look, more importantly, how the heck did you guys find my ship? I thought I'd never see it again.
A dimension back, I found it lying around in the middle of nowhere. Kirby and I got it operational again, so we might be able to use it to get back to Dreamland.
So that's where it ended up. You guys think you could let me aboard? This place is crawling with Doomers.
Alright, fine, just don't try anything.
So, Magolor gets let aboard the Lore Star Cutter, having changed his evil ways. Keyword being changed his evil ways, not just straight up doing away with them. Because the credits into the Magolor Epilogue shows that while Magolor isn't trying to take over the world anymore, he has become a capitalist. This is why so much of the stuff aboard the Lore Star Cutter costs money now. Back before you pick up Magolor, the ship will only have the bare necessities, but once you do pick him up, he'll start setting up the shops and the copy ability stuff, and he'll be making you pay for their usage. That's where all the stuff on the Lore Star Cutter you have to pay for comes from. Anyways, Dimension 2. It's a coastal city with some extra-dimensional traits that's been overrun by extra-dimensional monsters. The boss will be a giant crab that has knife hands instead of pincers, along with a giant mouth. Dimensions 3 and 4 can be done in either order. Dimension 3 is yet another dimension that somewhat resembles the plane that you hail from, but with extra-dimensional quirks. This one's far more rural and naturalistic, however, and therefore hasn't attracted a Doomer invasion. The main environment around here is jungle-like, with all the jungle vines and leaves being magenta-ish instead of green like normal ones would be. The boss here looks kinda like a monkey with a tiger head and bug wings, all naturally blended together to feel like a natural creature and not a weird fusion monster. Dimension 4 leans a lot more towards being a Bizarro dimension. It has a hot pink dimensional plane background, with a foreground that contains orange terrain, and trees that have green bark and grow mushrooms instead of leaves. This dimension's levels take place up in the sky instead of being on the ground. This dimension's boss is a blue pterodactyl that uses multi-elemental breath weapons. Dimension 5 is next. It's a desert dimension with red-colored sand and a teal sky. The boss is a pyramid with arms and legs. Up to Dimension 6, which is the well-known quote-unquote another dimension. It's the one you visit at the end of Return to Dreamland's campaign and in the side mode in Star Allies. The boss is a gas cloud-like amalgamation of pure extra-dimensional energy. Kirby's previous experiences in this dimension won't be mentioned much. Dimension 7, the final dimension before Dreamland, is Halcondra. And since this dimension is heavily populated, it's yet again under attack by Doomers. The environment design in this dimension varies. The first half of levels in this dimension are designed like egg engines, and the second half are designed like dangerous dinner. The final boss of this dimension is the Grand Doomer, who will be blocking you from the portal back home you just opened. And you'll have to fight it from the ship. Once again, Kirby's previous experiences in this dimension won't be mentioned much, outside of a couple vague lines of dialogue from Magolor if you go up and talk to him. And then finally, Dimension 8, Dreamland. This world will be a contrast to most final worlds in both Kirby games and 2D platformers in general, since usually the grassland area is in the first world you visit, while here it's in the last. Dreamland has been completely overtaken by Doomers, far more than to the point that Dimension 2 and Halcondra were overtaken. Kirby says that you'll still need to collect extra dimensional energy from levels so that maybe they can open a larger portal that can send the Doomers back where they came from. Each level is filled with bizarro extra-dimensional creatures that have invaded Dreamland, and enemies that are indigenous to Dreamland that have been corrupted by extra-dimensional energy. At the end of Dreamland, you'll find Castle DDD, which is crawling with more Doomers than anywhere else in Dreamland. At the top of Castle DDD, you'll find King DDD chained to the wall, being overseen by a Doomer that looks dark and shadowy, called a Shadow Doomer. You fight the Shadow Doomer. It's not a particularly hard fight, since while it's a step above regular Doomers, you did fight a full-on Grand Doomer at the end of the last world, and it's not that much stronger than normal Doomers. Once defeating it, however, it doesn't quit. Instead, it transforms into a being of pure shadowy mist, and then directs its attention to King DDD. It uses a strange shadow drain attack on DDD, and absorbs some sort of dark power from him. DDD looks drained from the attack, but is so conscious enough to yell angrily at the Shadow Doomer Cloud. The Dark Cloud then uses the power absorbed from DDD to transform itself into the form of which it just absorbed power from. Boss of Dimension 8, Shadow DDD. The Shadow Doomer is mimicking King DDD, and it wants to use its Shadow Hammer to pound you so hard into the ground that you're pushed 6 feet under. Now, naturally, Shadow DDD is eventually defeated. Upon depleting his health bar, a cutscene shows Shadow DDD taking a big, wide swing at Kirby with a hammer, and Kirby easily dodges. The hammer ends up connecting with the chains that are restraining the real King DDD, causing them to break and setting DDD free. The second King DDD is free, he just goes ham on Shadow DDD and defeats him in seconds. There can only be one! With the Shadow Doomer destroyed, Kirby obtains the final interdimensional energy charge. Magolor pilots the Lord Starcutter over to the top of Castle DDD, where Kirby and Kirby board the Starcutter and plug the charge into the fuel tank. Before they use the last of their interdimensional charges to open a portal to send the Doomers through, Kirby pipes up that he may have a better idea on how to use that energy. Magolor interjects that not opening that portal would leave Dreamland at the mercy of the Doomers, but Kirby rebuts that they already handled almost all of the Doomers on the way to DDD's castle, and that it should be fairly easy to handle those that remain. He says that to use the remaining charges to vacate the remaining Doomers would be a waste. Magolor asks what else Kirby could possibly have in mind, and Kirby responds.
What if, theoretically, we could use the remaining charges to open a portal that could take us to the highest dimension?
The highest dimension? What could you possibly want there? Opening a portal that goes that far would be extremely dangerous.
But think about it, a dimension like that, what you could experience there, it would be fantastical.
That sounds incredibly reckless. Why are you so obsessed with this dimension all of a sudden? It's a wasteland.
Magolor, I had a life before I was cast out into that dimensional wasteland. And the only way for me to get back to that life is to reach the highest dimension. I've really been hoping that you could help me get there.
I'm sorry. I really am. But whatever you could possibly be looking for in the highest dimension that could bring you back to your old life, it's too dangerous. Going there could spell disaster for this ship and anybody aboard it. Dreamland's a very nice place. I'm sure you could start a new life here, and maybe it'd be even better than your old one.
Well, then it looks like you give me no choice. I tell you to buckle up, Kirby, but I think you'll be too busy with him for that. So, good luck!
That's right, you fools! Kirby was evil the entire time. And you probably didn't think that would be the case this time around, since he's player 2! And because you thought the same thing about Elfilin last time, and ended up being wrong. But nope, evil AF. After Kirby betrays you, player 2 gets replaced by a Phantom Kirby like player 3 and player 4 are. Anyways, you can deal with Kirby's betrayal in a moment, but for now you have to fight corrupted Magolor. His fight here is quite similar to the first phase of his fight in Return to Dreamland, except at a much smaller scale. He doesn't have the Master Crown this time, he's just been corrupted with extra-dimensional energy. So think of this fight as a sort of mix between Phase 1 Magolor in Return to Dreamland and the Magolor you play as in the Magolor Epilogue. Halfway through the fight with Magolor, Kirby opens the wormhole to the highest dimension and flies through it. This will have major repercussions in a moment, but for now it means that the battlefield in your battle against Magolor has just gotten really trippy. Once you deplete Magolor's health bar, he falls to the ground and the dimensional energy dissipates. The camera cuts to the Lore Starcutter making it through the wormhole into the highest dimension, and we see Kirby leaving the ship. Kirby approaches Magolor as he struggles to get to his feet. Magolor tells Kirby that Kirby's betrayal and his use of extra-dimensional powers like that prove that he may have been the cause of the Doomer invasion to begin with. Whatever Kirby's intentions in the highest dimension are, they can't be noble, so Kirby will have to catch up and defeat him. Magolor opens the locked door, and Kirby runs out to pursue Kirby. Dimension 9. The highest dimension. The highest dimension is a very strange place. It seems to consist of caverns that are carved out of pure bright energy, instead of the usual stone that caverns are typically carved out of. Additionally, objects from the lower level dimensions keep phasing in and out of existence in this dimension, and they're always appearing in weird, warped, twisted ways. The enemies here are twisted amalgamations, even by normal extra-dimensional enemy standards. The more you progress through this large level, the more you inch closer to this massive extra-dimensional energy beam that's visible in the background every time the caverns open up. Eventually, when you get close enough, you'll find a Kirby right next to the energy beam, and he appears to be continuously inhaling the energy and absorbing its power. You watch Kirby change color as he inhales the extra-dimensional energy, changing from yellow to white. Shortly after the color change, Kirby notices Kirby walking towards him and stops inhaling to address Kirby.
Kirby, Kirby, Kirby. The hero of Dreamland. You've been on a lot of adventures, haven't you, Kirby? You've thwarted a lot of evil. And once upon a time, I was that evil. You now know me as Kirby, but I used to be known by a very different name. The Star-Conquering Traveler. I was a great destroyer of worlds, feared by some and worshipped by others, until I was defeated by you. The force of my defeat blew me back through dimensions until I landed in that ethereal wasteland, spectral tomb of dimensions. In my weakened state, I did not have the power to open a portal to send me back, only to send other creatures in my place to hopefully exact my revenge. And that's exactly what I was doing, until you arrived at my doorstep. And with your help, I made it here. And now I've returned to my former glory. And do not think for even a second that you'll be able to deprive me of that again.
That's right. Kirby here is actually the last surviving remnant of Void Termina. In Kirby Star Allies, it was heavily implied that Void Termina was the same kind of being that Kirby is, though when he fights him, he's evolved far past being a simple pink puffball like Kirby. Since I absolutely loved Void Termina as the big bad in Star Allies, and I really want him back for round 2, I figured a cool way to go about bringing him back for round 2 would be for us to see him revert to puffball form after he got supernovaed at the end of Star Allies. Anyways, final boss phase 1. Void Kirby. Void Kirby is, of course, Kirby from before but white instead of yellow. And he has a lot of super juiced up attacks that utilize dark extra-dimensional energy. Very frequently, he'll switch between Dark Void versions of Kirby's copy abilities. Void Sword, Void Cutter, Void Fire, Void Water, and plenty more. After depleting his first health bar, Void Kirby will give Kirby a sly look. Kirby dives headfirst into the energy beam he was absorbing before. Final boss phase 2, Void Kirby. A health bar appears, then a second health bar appears. Both health bars are then covered in eye shields, with the form of 10 strange eyeballs being visibly engulfed in its form's dark mist. Void Kirby here is very big, and while this fight doesn't take place in a 3D plane like Star Allies' final fight did, it does take up more space than a single screen. The camera here will be zoomed out more than usual, and you'll still only be able to see part of Void Kirby most of the time. You'll have to maneuver around his massive form, often vertically hovering around him, all while avoiding a ton of dark energy attacks and trying to hit the eyeball with your copy ability. The eyeballs will be big, and there will be some floating platforms as to make hitting the eyes actually doable when using copy abilities that aren't very vertical friendly, or for if you're just not using copy abilities at all and you're just blasting stars at his eye. Once all 10 eyes are destroyed, the dark mist around Void Kirby's form will ease up a little. It won't go anywhere near disappearing fully, but it will allow you to see Kirby's face at the center. Now that the eye shields are gone, it's time to wade through the mist surrounding him and slap his stupid face a few times. You'll have to do this while still avoiding a crap ton of dark dimensional energy that Void Kirby is using to attack you. Once one of his 2 health bars are depleted, Void Kirby will send a massive blast at Kirby, which will send him flying way up into the sky. Thankfully though, something catches him. That something being the Lore Star Cutter. Magolor flew it over to lend Kirby a hand. Kirby then takes the controls, and you fight Void Kirby's final health bar from the ship. Just like the Grand Doomer earlier, and also like the final boss in Kirby Planet Robobot. Upon blasting Void Kirby enough with the Lore Star Cutter's weapons that his second health bar is depleted, the Dark Entity loses control of his extra-dimensional powers and crashes into the Lore Star Cutter head first. The collision causes another portal to open, which sends everybody back to Dreamland. Kirby crashes through a few crates near the base of Castle Dedede before colliding with the ground and stopping. Kirby, now once again powerless, also hits the ground not too far from where Kirby landed, and the Lore Star Cutter crashes for the millionth time in the background. Kirby and Kirby get up to face each other. They stare each other down for a moment, before passing a glance at one of the crates that Kirby smashed through. This crate just so happened to hold 2 invincible candies inside of it, which are now scattered on the ground near the 2 puffballs. Kirby and Kirby each eat one, and then immediately rush each other. Cue the final boss fun math sequence of this Kirby game. They're not trying to overpower each other's Hyper Blast like in Star Allies, nor is Kirby trying to ram the ultimate life form with a semi-truck like in Forgotten Land. This time, it's 2 Kirbys, who both ate an invincibility candy, running directly into each other. Succeeding the Button Masher sends Kirby flying up, and away into deep space, eventually colliding with a moon belonging to another planet, which will then shatter with the force of the collision. With his victory complete, Kirby looks up at his fallen enemy and the destroyed moon, and... And that is my pitch for a new 2D Kirby game. Aside from sub-games and mini-games, but you know what, this video is already taking way too long to make, so you know what, maybe I'll do a part 2 at some point. You'll have to subscribe to see if I do or not. But let me know down in the comments what you guys thought about this pitch. Did I prove that 2D Kirby can be justifiable in a world where 3D Kirby exists? Is it in no way justifiable and I am a fool for thinking it should be and 2D games should be banned by the US Constitution? Are 2D Kirby games still justifiable, but I specifically did a really bad job at it? Let me know. I am interested in your feedback.